Hello, welcome to a different video. This is going to be a video just talking about the 15 streak that we did last month. I've been sitting on the footage for these videos for a while. I have the footage ready if I want to reference it, but I wrote out this document went through all the runs first of all earlier this afternoon, and then I wrote out this document talking about all the runs and my feelings about them, like notes about them, things I thought were interesting, things of that nature. Also some stat stuff if you're interested in this. The streak was 15 wins in a row. It starts with an Exile Melting run featuring Little Fade, and it ends on an Awoken run with the Sentient. So from Exile Melting through the second time you would see default Hellhorned were the wins. And I wrote out I went through, got the run history up here, and I went through and just wrote down everything about all of the runs and what I thought was worth mentioning, and we'll talk about it. Making this video because I think it would be cool. I thought it'd be fun to do something a little different, and I don't know, if I can do this, then you can also do it, right? If you think that you can't be good at Monster Train, I'm here to tell you you can. And this will be a little video talking about Monster Train. Worth mentioning, 15 wins is really good for me, especially with the way that I play this game and the style of content that I do. I play a little faster, so getting 15 wins in a row, I have to be a little more on. But it's not the biggest streak ever put up by far. I do believe that if you really try to, you can reach a 100% win rate in this game. You just have to really sit down and learn everything. And I'm not there yet, but if we play for long enough, perhaps I'll get there. 15 is really good though. I do not know what the highest streak ever recorded is. I think it's somewhere in the 90s, is what I've heard from Dusk, who has a pretty big streak, but those aren't all recorded and such, so you know. But either way, I don't think I have anything else I want to touch on in this intro. I should have written like a little intro thing here. Yeah, I think that covers it more or less. I got the lo-fi beats playing in the background. If you want the playlist, I will tell it to you. It probably won't be in the description because I'll forget by the time this goes up. But if you do want the playlist, just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you on it. But yeah, this is written out in Notepad, so you know, formatting and such. But this is what I was feeling. I got the runs in the background. What the heck? I'm still recording. Everything on my side monitor just minimized instantly. That's very shocking. I don't know. Well, either way, everything is okay. I'm still recording, and I'm not gonna throw this out. I already threw out one attempt because I realized I forgot to open Monster Train. So we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna keep going. I'm gonna take the punches and keep going. I think I covered everything I really wanted to say in the intro part, so let's get into it. Basically, my plan is I'll go through this little stat part here, talk about clans and generally how I feel about them in the DLC, what I think is good, what I think is bad. You probably have a pretty good idea of this if you've watched the tier list videos, but if you haven't, I'll give you a little brief intro of what I feel. I'll go through each of the runs with you. We got 15 lined up, and I will talk about the 16th run as well, because that one should have been a win, but foolishness caused it to be a loss. I do also have my video player here with, like, I cleared it out so that this just has, if I scroll right, it'll have all 15 of the runs lined up, so if I want to reference any specific moment in a run, I can show it off as well. But that'll be a little more rough because I don't have specific timestamps in mind. But this is here as well. And yeah, I think without any further ado, we can begin. I think I covered it all. Nothing's coming to mind. Let's go. First off, we'll talk about the clan representation. I wrote these down. I did not differentiate Hellhorned or like Exile or Default, but the streak starts at Exile Melting and ends at Default Hellhorned. So there's 3 extra runs so every champion got played once, and then Fade, Echo Right, and Prince got played an extra time. So we have 1 run with every champion, and then 1 run extra with each of those champions. Is how it's distributed. And then for actual representation, so Hellhorned as main we had 3, and we had 3 Hellhorned secondary runs. for a total of 6. You can, when we get through the document, we can, or you can, if you're interested, check and see how many of these are exile and how many are default. I just lumped them all together because it's easier to see. It doesn't differentiate on the allied clans, and also I didn't want this section to be, I don't know, twice as long, but that doesn't really matter. Notepad goes forever anyway. But Awoken as main, we had 2 runs of Awoken main and 4 runs of Awoken secondary. The real surprising one to me, and this is just how random happens, we had very few Stygian runs in the streak. We had 2 main, 1 secondary, so only 1 run where Stygian wasn't forced to be there. Same for Umbra, 2 main, 1 secondary. 3 melting main, 1 secondary, so same situation, but we had an extra run of melting default, so it was an extra run. But same sort of situation as Stygian and Umbra. So these 3 clans were underrepresented, I would say, at 3-3-4, and then Hellhorn, Awoken, Wormkin were overrepresented in what you would expect to be your average outcome playing random secondary cycling main. And then finally 3 Wormkin main and 5 secondary. So I wrote a little bit about this down here. Effectively, I believe Wormkin is... I think Wormkin's the strongest secondary clan. I think Wormkin is just really, really good. It is hard to find a run where a Wormkin common isn't going to help you. You have Echo Transfer, you have Echo Infusion, you have Proclamation, which is good as well. Like, Wormkin is a really, really strong supporting clan because it has so many good commons. So many good commons. So, I do think that a part of why I got this big streak is just luck. I did make some good plays, but we also had some really, really strong runs and some real moments of unbelievable moments as well, but we'll get into those. For the most part, though, I think that Wormkin is a really, really strong supporting clan, and it was very fortunate that we got 5 runs with Wormkin as the secondary and a total of 8 runs. Over half of these runs had Wormkin on them. I know it does feel like, because it feels to me, and it probably feels to you, like I play a lot of Awoken, but in the streak, I played a lot of Wormkin. I do think that Awoken is a pretty strong secondary as well. Awoken brings a lot of good things to the table. It's very easy to find and complete a run with Awoken as your secondary. You have a lot of good options. You have really, really strong carries in Awoken. Similarly in Hellhorn, Hellhorn has some very strong carries. Hellhorn has some real garbage units, but Hellhorn also has Horned Warrior, who is a bit of a light in the dark for that clan. Any unit that starts with multi-strike in a clan with good attack scaling is going to be strong, and so Hellhorn brings something good to the table as well. I don't think Hellhorn is as good of a secondary, but Imps are strong, Welder Helper is good, Transcendent is ridiculous, especially if you have Exile Hellhorn. Transcendent is very, very good. So Hellhorn brings some things to the table as well. You might be noticing I'm getting at something here as I go on. Stygian's also pretty good as a secondary, because you get great things. You get Hot Shark, you can play Sirens if you don't have Exile Stygian secondary. Foregone Power is a little awkward, but Stygian brings a lot. Even just Hot Shark is very good. Having a consistent backline option like that is very, very strong. And Stygian spells are also very good, same as Wormkin. Umbra sucks. This is no secret. No one's going to be surprised by me saying this to you, but Umbra brings very, very little to your game plan in the DLC. Gorge units are much worse. Morsels are much worse. And as a result, when you're not forced to play Umbra because you're playing them as the main, Umbra falls very short. Really, it's just tough, man. Umbra really struggles here. I want them to be cool because morsels are such an interesting mechanic, and morsels got buffed in the DLC, but the sweep from the divinity on the top floor really hampers any sort of morsel scaling plan, because for 2 reasons. It forces you to you have to hit a specific relic to make morsels survive if you're playing sweep on the top floor, or even if you do hit that specific relic, which is wing technology, giving all your morsels damage shield, you'll still have them die if they attack into spikes, which happens more often than you would expect, because morsels can spawn with attack pretty easily. So all of this leads to Umbra. On top of that, Umbra doesn't bring a whole lot of interesting utility spells. The best card they have is probably Immortal Trade. Prismal Dust also similarly strong, but a lot of their uncommons make morsels. A lot of Umbra cards make morsels, and morsels, especially with Umbra secondary, they don't do anything. And that's the real problem Umbra faces. I think that their Gorge units need help because both of the dogs are really bad, Shadow Eater's pretty bad, Overgorger's awkward. Like, the only playable unit I feel Umbra has as a mainline carry is Alloyed Construct. And Alloyed Construct got a lot better as well, but talk a lot about Umbra even though they're not super represented here, but Umbra is a hard one to really navigate, so they're worth talking about a little extra here because that's the point of the video. You've seen me play enough Awoken and Stygian runs to know what's going on, but Umbra struggles a lot, so I want to talk a little bit about what's up with Umbra. Melting also is good. Melting does a lot of good things for you. 2 of these runs were little fades, so they were kind of just shoo-ins, but Melting as a secondary is also pretty good. Melting has a lot of very strong units, so Melting brings a lot to the table, and like I said, I think Wormkin's really, really good. Sad to see Umbra, though, in the state that it is, because I think morsels are very cool. Real quick, just to let you know, I'm going to pause the video, because I need to plug in my phone, and I don't want to boop-a-da-doop ya. So give me 1 second here. Now what I should have done is I should have paused the music before I started stopped the recording, and then unpaused it after I stopped the recording, or started the recording again, so that there wasn't a weird jump there. However, I didn't think to do that. So anyway, moving on. Here's the stats on this if you want to see them. You can see the Exile and defaults as we go through. To begin, first run, it is Exile Melting, Exile Hellhorned. We play Spikes Fade 3, and let me pull it up here. So this is how I'm going to format this. I have it broken down so you see the champ we played, what the game plan generally was, and then notes about the run. This run is Spikes 3 Fade. It started with 2 Welder Helpers. I believe it started with 2 Welder Helpers. I was trying to check this, but I don't think I did. Is this the right run? Yeah, this is the right run. I think this started with 2 Welder Helpers. And I'll try to show those as well, starting cards, in case they impact anything interesting. But Spikes 3 Fade, 2 Welder Helpers in your starter. We hit Endless really early, and yeah, this run was crazy. To start the streak off, we had a really crazy run. Here, let me move this to the side. It's Clergy Combat 1, so Fade, I checked it in the footage. Fade leaves first combat with 31 spikes and 31 attack, which is absurd. Those are numbers you want to be seeing after combat 3, and we hit that in combat 1. I was playing a lot of Spikes Fade during the streak time because I wanted to see how she was. I had been playing a lot of Firelight before, so I was playing a bunch of Spikes Fade during this, and she's really good. I'll talk about her a little more in the next Exile Melting run, which also plays Spikes Fade. But basically, if you pick Spikes Fade and you start with Welder Helper, you put Spikes Fade on the top floor, and it's not a high risk gamble. If you don't draw the Welder Helper in time, she just dies and then you replay her. But if you do draw the Welder Helper in time, you get so much value. You hit so big if that happens. Other than that, a few interesting things happened on this run. You'll notice in the relics here, we have sketches and cold stones. So what happened in the mid game? I'll switch tab back in here so you can see everything. What happens in the mid game of this run, because Spikes Fade, she ends at 510 spikes. She does everything. All I have to do is play Welder Helper. So what I ended up doing is I ended up playing or taking sketches, because that pulled all 4 Welder Helpers out of the deck instantly and put them mid-floor, where they would then burn out and then go to the top of the deck again. We also had 2 other uninfused Welder Helpers, or unbuffed Welder Helpers here. But yeah, I took sketches just because it made the deck 100% consistent. I always had Welder Helpers out in time. Like no chance I could miss, because we took space to play 4 Welder Helpers. So in the worst cases, if all 4 Welder Helpers go mid-floor and I don't draw any armor to put Fade on the top 4 on Divinity, you can put her behind the Welder Helpers because they will tank the hits. And other than that, this run's really strong. I did also take Weathered Cold Stones because I had Endless on Welder Helper. I had nothing to play, so I just took Weathered Cold Stones to full heal my deck. And yeah, this run was crazy. This run was very, very strong. Did I leave anything else here for me to mention? No. With Little Fade in general, what you'll find is that she is a early game weak, late game strong champion. And so in this run, there was no question of the early game. There was no uncertainty because of Welder Helper, and the run took off as a result. It was very good. Great start to the streak. Up next, I'm going to leave this notepad on the other monitor. Like, I'll drag it off and drag it on so that I don't have to keep like tabbing out and tabbing back in. That'll be easier. This is a Shattered Shell run. This one was also pretty interesting. So this is... I'll drag it back on while I'm talking about it here, though. This is Exile Worm Kin, Exile Awoken. Our champion is Marshward 3 Echo Right. I know, right? And then the game plan here is a self-infused Shattered Shell with quick multi and Marshward the tank. My game plan goes on a little long here. This isn't supposed to be this long. Who wrote this? Kind of idiot. Anyway. Yeah. So we had Marshward 3, we had a Shattered Shell, and we had Holdover Echo Infusion. Those are the important beats here. Lots of angles, though. We covered a lot. The main idea was just Holdover Echo Infusion keeps Shattered Shell alive, because he only has 20 health. But what you'll find with Shattered Shell is 20 health is enough if you have a survivability option, because that lets your Shattered Shell take 2 hits, assuming you are playing exact 100 pack shards, which I did in this run. So you can generally live... You get to see 18 cards, more or less, before you're in... or before your Shattered Shell is dying. So you should usually find your answer, of which we had a few here. The interesting pieces of this run, I didn't drag it off, ridiculous. What's wrong with this guy? For Shattered Shell survivability, we had Echo Infusion, obviously, and then 2 other Echo Infusions, which were not the holdover one. Also had Echo Transfer to help him scale, but that's less important. The other option to help him live on the Divinity here is a double-stacked Old Magic that was giving sap. This would just stop the Divinity. So like in your worst case, I had 4 options to keep my Shattered Shell alive. So even in the worst of times in this deck, I should hit an answer. If you miss an answer, it's because you bottom deck 4 cards, and at that point, with Awoken's Rail Spike, it's not your day, man. Just give up. But other than that, there's a few notes to hit on here. Let me bring the notepad back up. Let's see what I wrote. I wrote this like 12 hours ago, so it's all gone from my mind. Right, the Marshward was interesting because this is the use case for Marshward. We have Shattered Shell, who is the only unit you need for this run. If you keep him alive, he'll kill everything with quick multi. And so, because this is a 1-unit run, you can play Echo Right with Marshward and just let that tank for your Shattered Shell. So Echo Right goes down. After Shattered Shell, you cheat out like 4 space of unit for free, and it's pretty cool. We also have Hardened Hull, which I was holding off on mentioning, and Karuska, and Base Charge here, which all make it very, very easy to hit that Etch 3, which is important because if you're reading along with me, there's an important part of Shattered Shell that you'll find, and a lot of I think 3 of my runs in the streak have Shattered Shell, because I think that Shattered Shell is very strong, but he has his limitations. So Shattered Shell is very strong once it starts. Once you get Shattered Shell around 80 attack, no matter what stage of the game you're in, you're more or less set. You're gonna kill everything. Shattered Shell needs help to get there though, and you need to think when you're playing this unit what option you're taking to help Shattered Shell get those first few kills. It's the same problem you have with Brandon, but it's a lot more viable to get there with this unit, I feel. It's easier to reach your goal. So what you need to do is you need to pick a unit of some sort, or a scaling option like Echo Transfer, and you need to get your Shattered Shell started. In this run, we had both, right? We had Echo Transfer and Root Seeds, which help get him going, get him up to like the initial 50s. And then to stop those first few heavies from going, we have Ensnare, which is important. And we also have the Hatched Bog Worm, which will chunk out like 100. A common theme that you'll find with Shattered Shell is something. You need something to help him, and we'll see this in a later run where I don't have the something that helps him and it's pretty close. But you just need some option. It can be Thorn Ward if you're playing Exile Awoken main. It can be, in this case, it can be Bog Worm. It can be anything. You need to make sure you have something that's chunking out like 100 damage to help your shell start going. And once he starts going, he goes big. He wins you the whole run. Also, make sure when you're playing this unit, Shattered Shell, I feel like I've said it 100 times now, so I'm trying to use different words, but when you're playing them, you need to think about the mini bosses on the divinity. This is something that I was not doing very much initially, but you're usually doing 200 to 400 damage sweep with Shattered Shell, which is enough to wipe out all the waves, but it's not enough to kill the mini bosses. So you need to have something. Ensnare works, Root Split Mask works. Root Split Mask, very, very good if you're playing a sweep unit, because it gives you an extra turn to get everything handled. But you just need to think about it, and you need to make sure you have something in mind. And your something can just be tanking it also. If you have the Pyre health for it, you can just take the hits. But those are your big threats with Shattered Shell. And he's really good. Very strong unit. Highly recommend playing him if you haven't lately. Up next, I think I'm going to move on from that one. I think I covered everything I wanted there. Up next is Hellhorn Wormkin. I'll pull it up here real quick. Didn't drag it off, this guy. Hellhorn Wormkin. Bring back the Notepad. So this run should have been easy. I remember this run vividly. I'll never forget this run. This run was sad. So this run's Brawler 3 Prince, and it has Apex Imp, right? You look at this and you go, wow, that's crazy. How nuts is this, right? The Apex Imp has no infusion, no second upgrade, just multi-strike. We have a Transcendent. There's one thing missing from this run. Welder Helper. There's no Welder Helper. But there was. In Ring 1 of this run, I saw Welder Helper, and I picked this Fortify. Why, you may ask? Well, the easy answer to that question is because I had no idea Apex Imp was lurking around the corner. But my reasoning was pretty simple. I wanted to play a Wormkin unit, and Fortify was infused and free and gave 5 armor. Welder Helper is good, but if I'm playing a Wormkin unit, like my thoughts for this run were to play something like 2 Keeper of Echoes in front of Brawler 3 Prince, which could be really fun. You'd get really big scaling, he'd be very strong and be cool. That was one of my thoughts, or just some sort of Wormkin unit. And in those runs, you don't fit a Welder Helper into your run. So I picked Fortify instead. I talked myself into it. And then we saw Apex Imp and no good Wormkin unit anywhere. So the run's still very strong. It relies on... let me see the Notepad document so I don't miss anything here. Yeah. I mean, basically this run's very strong, but it relies on these 3 shelters, which are Value Stone, Remove, Consume shelters, and it relies on the real tough one here. The Transcendent has Fledgling Imp, so the rage numbers get very, very high. You'll see we pre-Relentless killed Seraph and the Divinity, but if I did not pre-Relentless these bosses, I would have died. It was very close. The Apex Imp and the Prince were doing somewhere in the range of like 500 damage per hit, I'm pretty sure, but we have a collective of 26 and 20 health on these 2 units, so it is paper thin. The game plan that ended up letting us survive it was play Transcendent, you get double triggers of the Apex Imp's self armor to help Transcendent take a hit, and then play Shelter. But this run was super close, and if I had clicked Welder Helper, this would have been one of the fastest runs of this series. This run was... yeah, this run was tough. It was real sad, but it ended up being fine, and it looks very good on paper. The score is very strong, but it's tough. I mean, you can see it's an hour and 10 minutes. This is a longer run for sure. No, I realized there's no reason. You don't need to see the script I wrote. I can just leave that off to the side, and then I can just go through the runs like this. That makes a lot more sense. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of freestyling as I go here. I was gonna go to bed, but instead I hit start recording, and now it's 5 a.m. But I'm gonna see it through now. I have no regrets, but I'll just keep this on the other page, and we can talk through the runs like this. It makes a lot more sense. I'll bring it back for the ending though. Anything else I want to mention here? I don't think so. This run was really close, and it should not have been. This run should have been really easy, but you can't know. Like, this is something that with Future Sight, pick Welder Helper instead. There's Apex Imp and no good Wormkin option for you, but you can never know that here. Where are we? We're on the Awoken run. This run's interesting. So this is a Cultivate 2 Spikes 1 Sentient, and the plan is Shattered Shell again, but this time with Awoken Hollow. So what I have found with the Sentient is that if you start Spikes, you can't play Shattered Shell, theoretically. What happened in this run, I believe, when I was looking back through the footage, and I don't remember this 100%, but I'm pretty sure I saw Sentient with Spikes or Rejuvenate, so I picked Spikes. And then I saw Awoken Hollow as one of my first unit options, so I took Awoken Hollow, and then I saw Shattered Shell. And then I went, okay, Sentient, you're benched. And I stopped playing the Sentient. I just stopped playing my champion entirely, because in this run there is no need for the Sentient. If you self-infuse Awoken Hollow and you put Shattered Shell behind it, this unit crushes. It gets 4/4 every time you play a heal on it. So the game plan of this run is click on any healing card they show me. I had 2 holdover and grafts here, and also a 3rd and graft. And I just clicked healing onto Awoken Hollow and cultivated Shattered Shell. This covers every base, right? Because the problems you have with Shattered Shell are keep it alive and get it started. Awoken Hollow gives it 4/4 every time you play a heal on it. That gets you past the early boundaries, and it gets you scaling like crazy. One thing worth remembering with the Shattered Shell lines as well, the first wave of the Divinity only has to deal, or you only have to deal 70 damage to kill it. So it's much easier to get through the Divinity with Shattered Shell than anywhere else, because you get basically a freebie on your first wave, which is very nice. This run is interesting to look at though, because it shows you can toss your champion away. I believe this run has a moment on it as well where I see the relic that gives 50% more health to your champion, and I say, oh, this will be good for Awoken Hollow. Oh wait, he's not my champion. That's right, I don't have a champion this run. Oh yeah, one other thing worth mentioning on this run. This is the run, I think I talked about this in the Monster Train episode I recorded right before this video, but on this run, even though this run is ridiculously strong and not even close in any way, on Arcus it takes 36 damage because there's an infused turn 1 heavy. And this is before I put the Awoken Hollow with the self-infuse, because I didn't have a temple out in a convenient spot, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like even runs that look ridiculously strong and should crush everything, even those runs can get caught by something like an infused heavy on turn 1. Sometimes you just get unlucky and you get clipped. It happens, and you try to cover for it. Now, this run also has Railhammer with Fortify, for whatever that's worth. Not much, barely worth mentioning. Really good run though. Shattered Shell's very strong. Next run is Tygian Worm Kin. These are both defaults. This run was also very strong. This is Conduit 1, Sweep Spell Weakness 2 Tethys. I think we saw Conduit as the last possible option. 2 spell weaknesses hoping for a Conduit. Game plan's Eel Gorgon. It has Eel Gorgon. It has double incants. There's a few things I will touch on here, but this is a very free run, generally speaking. But a big theme, and a big theme that I want to impart on you, is you can lose Monster Train runs. And of course you can. Why would he say that? But when you see Eel Gorgon and you see Founding Seal in like ring 4 or 5, it's really easy to go, okay, this run is completely won, and turn your brain off, and you can drop these runs. There's an important thing that you have to watch out for on a run like this, and I will pause here for a second and take a drink of water because I need a drink of water, and I will give you a second to look at this run and tell me what could lose it. Because it looks like it's unlosable, right? Let me take a sip. So the game plan of this run is Keeper of Echoes scaling in Eogorgon. We have a Keeper of Echoes infusion and a regular Keeper of Echoes. And then we also have Tethys, who's just giving -1s to all of our spells. Pretty good. We also have a self-infused +25 endless, large stone endless hot shark, actually. The thing that can lose you this run, a very important thing to keep an eye out for, is Diligent Seraph. So Eogorgon, this is a very fringe case because I don't see a lot of Eogorgons, and even less so on runs with Diligent Seraph. Eogorgon can line up where if you don't have enough spells, you have no incants for when Seraph enters Relentless against you, and then your Eogorgon that you have so precious, he ends up doing, like, he's just a stat stick, right? He does like maybe 2 multi-strike, and then you get clipped and die. And it sucks, right? You get caught in a run that seems really, really strong. So you have to make sure that you're aware of things like that. You have to take a moment when you have a run that looks unlosable and go, okay, how do I possibly lose this? Also worth mentioning, since this is one of the only runs where he gets to show up, in the DLC, I think that if you play Hot Shark, you really want to prioritize infusing Hot Shark with himself, or Glug Cider, I guess, also works if you want to mention him. It is important because a lot of enemies on the Divinity have 25 HP that matter. There's also that cascading harvest wave where you'll kill the front enemy before the Spikes enemy dies, and the Spikes enemy gets to walk up as a result because of armor. Self-infusing is pretty important. Doubling his frostbite output is strong. It makes him a very, very formidable early game and mid game unit, and it kills all the backline in the late game. Other than those things, though, this run is really, really easy. Takes Cracked Helmet just to clear out all the units that it starts with. And yeah, Founding Seal. Good. Founding Seal, Eogorgon. Good. I haven't been showing you the starting cards, but it really hasn't mattered for a lot of these runs. It only really mattered for like the Fade run, I think. There's a look into the future for you. Alright, up next is Umbra. Umbra Hellhorned. Oh yeah, this run. This run's really cool because it gets to take an Unironic Volatile gauge. Pretty interesting as well that this streak has like, it has a run that takes an Unironic Volatile gauge and a run that takes an Unironic Sketches, relics that are generally pretty bad. So we have, on this run you have Trample 3 Penumbra, you have a Deranged Brute with 3 +25s, 100 health, and then you have Quick Large Multi Horned Warrior with Brandon Infusion. Also has 4 rituals. So, a few things to note about here. Penumbra with Monstrous 3 Penumbra, I feel like is your best option if you don't see Architect. I think both are okay, but you have to take space to accommodate the Monstrous 3, and you need to try to do something to keep him alive. And generally, I think it's kind of 50-50 on if he's even worth it. If you can give him some lifesteal, like in this case it has Refined Voice, so he's worth it. He does a lot, because 170 trample will really start you out. You get the first few hits in, you get the rest of your wave scale, and it's pretty good. Moving the mic a little bit just in case you're unaware. Like with Refined Void, I think it's worth committing. I think without it, it's kind of iffy, but this run didn't need draw because of Volatile Gauge, so it was easy to commit here. Penumbra's not in the worst spot. I think that Penumbra's a little better than I initially thought he was. I think Monstrous is viable, but he needs a little help. Other than that, Deranged Brute Horned Warrior Ritual of Battle. This run showcases an interesting scenario where at the start of the run I saw Horned Warrior, and that was my only viable pickup, I'm pretty sure, for units. So I took Horned Warrior, and then the shop had Large Stone. So I gave Horned Warrior Large Stone to take me out of the early game. I wasn't very confident. I think Trample Penumbra struggles a little bit with killing Daedalus. Penumbra in general struggles with killing Daedalus. The numbers are just hard to line up. Hard to get Penumbra to a point where he's killing a 600 health enemy, even pre-DLC. So I put Large Stone on Horned Warrior. Large Stone on Horned Warrior was supposed to just be a throwaway while I waited for my actual game plan to show up, but then I saw Deranged Brute. The Large Stone, interestingly enough, it let us take a trial pretty confidently and basically paid for itself as a result, but upon seeing Deranged Brute and Ritual of Battle, we just committed to Horned Warrior. We put Brandon into him, we gave him Quick, and then at the end of the run when we picked up Firestone Housing, he got another multi-strike, which was nice too. But didn't really need it because of Umbra Stone, it was just kind of nice to have. Deranged Brute, 3 multi-strike unit, Ritual of Battle, pretty strong. It doesn't 100% win, some enemies will sneak by, but we picked up a Trample Stone as well. Probably the best thing that Umbra brings to the table. So, let's talk now. Final thing to mention on this run, of course, big question on your mind. What's going on with this Volatile gauge, right? So, the Volatile gauge is actually sick in this run because we have our initial units. First of all, we took energy in the first boss draft because I had Ritual of Battle and it wasn't upgraded yet. I just took energy so that I could play it consistently. This run did not start with Ritual of Battle, by the way. I did check this. I naturaled into one and then duplicated the rest. But I was thinking about how I was gonna play all these rituals, and also had Transcendent, and I ended up grabbing energy because this deck is very expensive. It also has Endless Molting Imp infused Welder Helper to clear backline. Worth mentioning, he's not super important because of the Trample Quick Horned Warrior, but he's here. He helps out some. He gives a little survivability as well. So, you know, worth mentioning him. I didn't mention him earlier. But Volatile Gauge, back to Volatile Gauge, right? You randomize your cards from 1 to 3 and you draw +3 per turn. We have 4 energy, which is already a reasonable case to take Volatile Gauge because you can then go to 5 energy potentially. But Volatile Gauge, if you're unaware, randomizes your cards from 1 to 3 and then applies cost downs. So by the time I saw Volatile Gauge, I had the 2 cost downs on Ritual of Battle. So Ritual of Battle no longer rolls 1, 2, 3, it rolls 0, 0, 1 as its potential costs. So this is the only card that matters in this deck. The other card that matters is Umbra Stone, but it's 2 cost. Our units all cost 1, which is not great, but in the worst of times what happens is I have to give up Welder Helper, which wasn't that important anyway. We have this Spell Chain Prismal Dust here to help out. So Volatile Gauge ends up being a good pick because it lets us cycle into these rituals significantly faster, and in the worst cases where you miss Umbra Stone, you cycle the deck really fast because you draw +3 anyway. Patient Seraph was the only thing that was really a concern, I feel like, because 100 health doesn't do a lot in the Patient Seraph, especially when you're getting that damage doubled. Prismal Dust neutralized that with a little assist from Welder Helper chumping, I imagine. But yeah, overall really good. Also picks up Sinner Self, worth mentioning, picks up Sinner Self, great relic with Volatile Gauge, cancel out the curse cost, pretty good. Some interesting stuff happens with this where, if you go back and watch this run, we have Sinner Self and Volatile Gauge, and I'm pretty sure a curse ends up costing 2, because what Sinner Self does is it just applies a minus effect of however much the curse costs, which was cool to learn. It was strange at the time, though. Alright, just checking my notes here. I'm gonna take a moment break. I need to take a few breaks here and there to keep the voice spry. Yeah, really, the only other thing I wrote down that I didn't mention is that this is a good run to look at as, hey, I'm doing something I'm doing something awkward, but it's my best option, and pivoting into it, because I was expecting to not play Horned Warrior all the way, and I was supposed to play something else, but he was what was shown to me, and he's where we ended up. Alright, up next is Melting Exile Stygian. This is the run that should have killed this streak. 100%. This run won off of the back of an unbelievable draw. So let's go through it. It's Burnout 3 Rector. The game plan is Dante with Paraffin Enforcer Infusion, and survivability comes from an Endless Molten Encasement. This run was bad. I would not suggest playing the run in this way. Putting Burnout 2 onto your main carry is awkward. This run has a secret extra unit that got removed, which is Hot Shark. Hot Shark was here, but he got cut once we got past Arcus. This run should have died at Arcus. What ends up happening on this run is I put the Paraffin Enforcer on the Dante because I go, this sounds fun. I want to see the really big numbers and I don't really care about anything else here. And so I did it. And the problem is, because we have perfect survivability, we have endless stealth, we have crazy damage, 6 multi-strikes on +3 rage per hit. This is, with 2 of these, this is 36 rage to the floor every round. But they burn out, because there is only one card that offers any sort of burnout extension. And up until Arcus, it did not have holdover. I didn't hit that. So the game plan ends up being Dante burns out, scramble to try and hit Sacred Wicks and bring him back. And then also Rector's here. And there was an unupgraded, or no, the Shark had +25, I think. So you end up in this position. I can just bring it up here for you, actually, because I did go through and check this one. This should be... I checked a timestamp for this moment. I think this is the run. Yeah, this is the run. So on Arcus here, it also has right, Icy Siliphyte from the inscription notice. What you end up having here is my units just end up, they burn out. It is how it goes. And we end up in this position here. Let me get this turn lined up for you. Ends up in this position where we're drawing the last 6 cards. We have Sacred Wicks with 5 units in the pool. 2 of them are Dante, I believe. One of them's Rector, one of them's Shark, and I don't know what the 5th unit is. It's probably Dreg. So you play the Sacred Wicks. You hit the perfect combo of Dante plus Shark, which Dante kills this boss in like 2 rounds. He scales so fast. But the Shark burns out right away, and there's no survivability option because I don't know where the Molten Encasement is. That's the interesting question here. Oh, I think I had to stop playing the Molten Encasement to draw Sacred Wicks. It's like, this is unorganized, but I want to show this off because what happens there, if you didn't see it, I'll roll it back for you. You play the Shark. Arcus does 30 per round and he's down like 500 health. Oh god, what's happening? My video player, what is this? I don't know what that was. You play the Shark, you play the Dante, and you die because the Shark dies after taking 1 hit. You need 3 hits, I'm pretty sure, to kill this boss. And you play what happens is I play Offering Token and I top deck the Purifying Cleanse. And then I get to put it on Shark. Shark takes 3 hits, boss dies, we win. Everyone's happy. But this run should have killed me. This is not something you would ever want to commit to. Paraffin Enforcer Infused Dante is very fun, but you have to have a more consistent option than 1 Purifying Cleanse. After that, it gets intrinsic, it gets holdover, it's easy money. But no, this run's super scuffed. Don't play this. Like, really don't play this. 1 Lady of the Reformed on this run, and you just crush, though. Ugh. But a pretty ridiculous run nonetheless. It was fun. It ends up making a pretty fun moment, and it makes for a fun moment in the streak, and it was worth it from a content perspective, but that run's terrible. Play Paraffin Enforcer on his own or something instead. Play anything else, man. Next run's Wormkin Umbra. This is the only representation of Umbra secondary on the run. This run's pretty cool as well. I don't know what to call this guy. I'm going to call him Aura Chef. This is what I like to call him. I feel like his effect is an aura, so I'm going to call him that from now on. I'm making the commit here. This is the Aura Chef, and this is a Spike Driver colony. Yeah. Right? Pretty wild. I never thought I'd stamp this guy, but this combo kind of speaks for itself. It's Umbra secondary, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I did have a plan, actually. If you look, we have Morsel Maker, and we have Crucible Warden. So my initial game plan here was play Chef, play Crucible Warden, play Morsel Maker. Morsel Maker makes 2 morsels, and those get +20 from the Chef per echo, so they get to just chonk down heavies alongside the rest of the gang, right? It's just, the plan is fill the floor with bodies. And then the event offered me Spike Driver Colony, and I clicked on that. Spike Driver Colony, a 1-space unit with multi-strike, comboed with Friendly units have plus 20 per echo. Good. Lots of damage. The interesting piece of this run, though, the thing that is worth talking about. I had these units left over. I had Morsel Maker, Crucible Warden left over. I thought this run was a shoe-in, but I would have lost without the Crucible Warden infusion. Well, probably not would have lost, but I would have had to have played mid-floor or something similar to that. The Crucible Warden infusion and the Morsel Maker infusion let us slap down all of these units top floor, and the 5 damage shield just let Spike Driver Colony tear things up. With this setup, you have 8 rounds before a Spike Driver dies, which takes you just outside of Relentless, it looks like, because the boss died 1 turn before Relentless. And that was a pretty fun one. It would have been okay to play mid-floor on this run as well, but, you know, quick plus 25, and then they get the improve effect, which gives them plus 20. Pretty good. Morsel Maker infusion or Crucible Warden infusion, either one works. Worth mentioning, if you don't know, Spike Driver Colony, you infuse it, it duplicates, you don't take extra pack shards, so you just get a bunch of free infusions on this. It was a fun run. Had an intrinsic space prism apparently as well. But it was cool to see Spike Driver get stamped, especially after the run before with Dante too. Fun to have 2 runs in a row with weird strategies that work out. Alright, next up, this run is, without a doubt, where am I? I'm here. This run is the most disgusting run of the streak. Maybe the most disgusting run of my life. This had so much happening for it. So it's Shardtale Queen, it's Imp Parade, Imperialist 2. Didn't see Imperialist at the start, so had to go Imp Parade at the beginning. I don't believe you ever play Rally with Queen, for what it's worth. I think that Rally's really bad. It's Rally bad. It's 5:15. I shouldn't have started this. I apologize. But I think you pick Imp Parade if you don't have a better choice in Imperialist with Queen. I think she's in a bit of a rough spot right now. But this run has Transcendent with Queen's Implink Self-Infuse. It has Ashes of the Fallen. It has Steel Singer. It's crazy. Just Steel Singer or just Transcendent wins this run. Together, it is the high roll in both directions. You can play this crazy Transcendent line where Transcendent is doing... So the way that this works, I guess, I will start with that. When you play the Transcendent, the Queen's Impling Infusion triggers and does 80 damage. That's it. And then you play the Transcendent again, and the next time you play it, it does 160 damage because Transcendent echoes the previous summon effect. I think it just does 80. I don't think it does 160 first play, which is why I paused there for. No, because then it would do 160, 320. That would be ridiculous. But it does 80, then it does 160, and it does 240, and you just steamroll over everything. You play Queen's Impling like 4 times, or Transcendent Queen's Impling 4 times, and you clear entire waves. On top of that, it has a pair of 200 attack times 2 Steel Singers with Animus of Speed infusion, and it has Holdover Glimmer doubled up. This is an interesting tech that I never really thought of doing until I did it here. I took Glimmer, I put Holdover on it, and I duplicated that and then split the infusions, so one of them pings off Spell Shield and one of them's Extreme Stun to kill the enemies. It was kind of cool. It worked out. It also has Nexus Spike to play double Glimmers. Like, the Steel Singer line enough in its own was enough, and then Transcendent happened too. Crazy run. You could play either one of these and just go nuts. Oh yeah, it also has Forever Flame. That was really ridiculous, because that makes the Transcendent free and the Steel Singers 1. Ooh, buddy. I think Queen is my weakest character right now, and that run took out any sort of fear I had about that character. Next up is Exile Awoken, Exile Worm Kin. This is the Capricious Reflection high roll. This relic gave me infused holdover echo transfer. The infusion was just incidental, but it gave me holdover echo transfer. It also gave me Incan Armor 2 Husk Hermit. So, you know, there's not a lot to say about this run. It's Strangler 1, Predator 2, Wendleton. I started with Strangler, I'm pretty sure, just to kind of test it out and then hit like crazy. Strangler is fine in the DLC, but you have to be really confident about your ability to scale him. And with Wormkin secondary, I think you can play him if you really want to. The Husk Hermit has a Keeper of Echoes infusion as well, apparently. I think I just threw that down for shards. Not really sure. There's really not a whole lot to tell you about this run. If you give your champion who has quick sweep multi-strike, if you give that champion plus 60 per round through an infused plus 15 spell chain, or an infused spell chain echo transfer, you win. You just win. That's all there is to it. It crushes. It absolutely goes nuts. The Capricious also gave a Permafrost Wormkin spike, which we got to use to clear the spikes wave, which wasn't really a concern, but was kind of like, you know, sure, why not? Also has Light's Gift. Also, you have rude enemies on strike, so you get to lock everyone to the top floor. This run's disgusting. It's really, really strong. Like, crazy strong. Kind of nice. 2 back-to-back runs. The Hellhorn Exile one was kind of strong because of a ridiculous high roll. This one was just, I mean, it was also strong because of a ridiculous high roll. The high roll was just Capricious Reflection. Up next, this run, also very strong. Exile Stygian, I think it's default Wormkin? Yeah, Exile Stygian, default Wormkin. It is Cold Channel 1, Titan Channel 2 Soul Guard, and it hit Lodestone Totem as our main plan. This run did one thing really interesting, so we'll start by talking about the Soul Guard. It started with Cold Channel and then needed to switch to... because Cold Channel doesn't synergize with Lodestone Totem very well when you take all the enemy's attacks to 0. He doesn't get hit, so the Cold Channel doesn't do much. So it switched to Titan Channel to have a 90 attack body for Relentless, because a lot of times with Lodestone Totem, I'm a big fan of Lodestone Totem. I feel very good about playing this unit. A lot of times your problem that happens with Lodestone Totem is you don't win Relentless with this card because it just doesn't do enough damage for whatever reason. So I picked Titan Channel to help with that. Someone pointed out after the run, with the change to the Lodestone Totem Essence, it would probably be better to take energy and put Lodestone Totem infused on the Keeper. A slight variation on the run that you could probably play as well. Worth keeping an eye out. Putting Lodestone Totem onto a unit for its infusion is probably better, because it just makes the unit, if it's 1 cost, into Lodestone Totem plus whatever the unit is. So, other than that though, I talked all that out. Now we get to talk about the actual interesting thing about this run, which is the 6 holdover infused Echo infusions with Intrinsic. This run gets to showcase an interesting thing, which is if you have more Intrinsic than you have card draw on turn 1, you'll overdraw. You'll draw 8. So even though I only had 6 or 7 draw, I was drawing 8 cards turn 1 because I had to draw my champion, my draw priority unit, and 6 Echo infusions. The run starts with Echo Infusion early. I think I pick up an infused Echo Infusion from first combat, pick up Holdover, pick up Intrinsic, and then the event before Daedalus was ×5. Turns out, 6 free spells that give survivability to these Lodestone Totems. Pretty good. The only other interesting thing that happened on this run is it was Daedalus Explosive Sigil. So I had to stop playing Echo Infusions to stop the Lodestone from making the Clergyman do 0. Because if the Clergyman did 0, they wouldn't hit Soul Guard, and if they didn't hit Soul Guard, they wouldn't take Frostbite, and they would walk up, and then they would die to my Pyre, and they would deal 1 damage to it per Clergyman. And that was kind of fun to think about. Other than that though, this run became watch for spikes and make sure that the spikes enemies actually die, and then click Echo Infusion 6 times on the enemy in front, or on the unit in front. Lodestone Totem, if you put 2 of these down, this is the real thing to talk about. If you put 2 Lodestone Totems down, everything dies to your Pyre if you can play enough spells, and enough spells is like 6, roughly. 6 or 7. And it's crazy for Relentless too. Really strong card. I love Lodestone Totem, even post-nerf. I'm still salty that they made him 3 cost from 1, but Lodestone Totem is bonkers. Card's really, really good, and I feel confident winning with it from almost any position they show it to me. Almost. Alright. Up next, this run, Exile Umbra, Exile Awoken. If you've ever asked me what's a combo that I can take to just win for free, this is the combo I would say. And I almost threw this run. This is a run that is a good example of not getting overconfident. Sometimes I personally get swept up in the hype of certain combos and certain things, and this run almost did me in. So what's the run? It is Stalwart Snack 2 Superfood 1 Primordium. It did not get shown aggressive edible. It's a Shattered Shell with Multi-Strike plus 25, Minor Refraction, and Husk Hermit infusion. And that's it. What I was initially thinking is Primordium's going to scale me so much that it doesn't matter, and I can just do this. But in practice, what ends up happening, as you can see, especially in the mid-game, this is really slow. It is so slow that I clicked on Nexus Spike, and I played... This isn't right. This is incorrect. This tooltip is wrong. And that's strange, because I remember this card vividly. This was double Root Seeds. I put 2 Root Seeds onto this Nexus Spike to help scale my Primordium, and I duplicated Root Seeds as well. The problem that I faced in this run is I tried to play too defensively, assuming Primordium was going to super scale Shattered Shell, and he didn't. Shattered Shell almost did not scale enough. As you can see in the mid game, we took 54 to Self-Made Harpy, or not Self-Made Harpy, but the Harpy's Guard. We took 16 from the Combat 4, and then after that we took 10 on Fire Wings. We took a lot of chip damage, and it was all because Shattered Shell was too slow. I was so confident that I was going to scale through Root Seeds and just get super strong, and eventually it does get super strong. You get to like 10 to 15 attack, but the first 3 waves were close. They were very tough. They were so close that I believe in a few cases I was saved by Plank. I think Plank pulled me back from the brink of disaster. The Extreme, or the Surge Stone, Power Stone Plank, and then the Surge Stone Plank here, the plus 20 consumes, plus the plus 10 piercing stings. Like, these 3 cards really helped chunk out those initial heavies and get us through to Shattered Shell going. A really awkward plan, but a plan nonetheless. And once it gets going, you got Wildwood Tome with Intrinsic, you got Root Seeds, you got everything you need. But getting there was tough on this run, and once you get Root Split Mask, it gets there pretty confidently. But it was really close. This run was very, very close, and it might not look it. It was probably one of the closer runs of the set. It's up there with the Apex Imp Prince run. Interesting that the runs that felt the closest were the runs that had really, really strong units and things that seemed like they should have been free wins, right? But just a run to remind you that no matter what, you should be always thinking about what could possibly lose me this run. How could I possibly lose this run? Find the answer. Think about it a little bit. Think about your scaling plans. And then that brings us to the other Fade run. This is the run that's worth talking about as well, because this is a mid-roll for Spike's Fade. Mid-roll for Spike's Fade, she ends at 375. You remember the first run was like 500 spikes, 500 attack. I took this one again because I wanted to test out Fade without the safety net of having, like, I wanted to test Spike's Fade again. And I'll talk a little more about Spike's Fade here in general. So the game plan, though, is just Fade, as usual. It also has this Kinhost Vessel with a Train Steward. I did that for the pack shards. It has this Kinhost Vessel. It has Hardenthal. We have Primitive Mold. I was bringing him back. I was playing him for fun. Add him in, why not, right? But this was a rough start for Fade. I think it did start with Echo Infusion. Here, I'll check this. I did not check what the starting card was for Fade, so we'll check this real quick. This should be... Let me scroll through. I checked all of these runs, so... This is 10, 11, 12, I believe. Should be my number. Yeah, so let's see our starting cards here real quick. Oh, it did not. It was Molded, Hosting Kin, Crushing Demise. So this run did not start with Echo Infusion. The first combat also was not Clergy. My Little Fade, I did look at this actually, I remember this now. Little Fade left the first combat at, I think, 7 spikes? Yeah, it was 7 spikes. I looked this up and I wrote this down. This run was also pretty rough. The early game was tough. It didn't look too good. Fade was not very strong. Kinhost Vessel was here as a backup plan just in case Fade wasn't good enough. She ends up getting there eventually, but this run caught up because of Combat 4. It was Party Boys, and Fade had like 30 spikes to just barely catch him. And once we got that, it started to become a little bit better, and we started to get her scaling and get her scaling, and then she started snowballing. Little help from Echo Infusion let her get there as well. Oh yeah, that's right. It has the extract, or not the extract, the intrinsic spell chain Echo Infusion, and then 4 more Echo Infusions here. Plus an Encased Divinity, that's right. This ends up being the plan, where we're just playing a ton of Echo Infusions on the Fade, but it took time to get there, and it was kind of scary on the way. But on the way there, we had other things to cover. We had Holdover Molded, we had Wickless Recruitment in case she died, Crushing Demise to help kill off some heavies as well. Generally speaking, though, like, this run was still very strong. This little Fade run still wins. She still gets very big. She gets to 375. She kills everything. There's more enemies in the DLC, it feels like, so there's more time for Fade to scale up. I think that Spike's Fade is the weakest of the 3 Fades. I do believe this is the case. However, I think that little Fade's worst outcome, her worst possible path, is leagues above the second best champion. I think she is... Little Fade is playing a different game. Little Fade is balanced for a completely different game, and she is crazy. Like, she's so strong. But she takes a little bit of finesse. What you have to understand with Little Fade, if you have trouble with this champion, you have to understand that she's weak early. She basically free wins you the game if you get past Bell, but you have to make sure that you're thinking about early on, because your draws aren't tailored, right? You have your starting deck full of garbage. You haven't cleared out Train Stewards yet, which are dead cards, because you need to be able to reform Fade guaranteed off of a random reform. You have to be careful. Past Talos it gets a little better, and then usually past Fel it gets very good. But you have to be careful with Fade. She's very strong, but you have to spend some time to get to know her. You need to shore up her weaknesses. Her weaknesses on Firelight are your units are going to burn out, so you want to pick out burnout units if you're doing that. You want to give her survivability if you're doing spikes, and you want to give her really nothing if you're playing the Endless Line. You just have to have a different plan. She'll kill one enemy for you, though. And she's crazy. You don't need me to tell you that, though. Very strong card. Thanks, Little Fade. Alright, the second to last run. Exile Worm Kin, Awoken. This run was really cool. I remember this run. This run was also really cool. This was a hard run. So what happens in this run is I start with Shellsmith. This is Repeater 1, Shellsmith 2, Echo Right. I start with Shellsmith, which is Etch Apply Armor 4. And my first banner is Bog Deep Cocoon Kinhost Carapace. And I click Bog Deep Cocoon. There's a multi-strike in the shop, and I go, screw the streak. I'm clicking Bog Deep Cocoon, and we're going out on my own terms. I'm clicking this shit, we're going. Bog Deep Cocoon finally gets its time in the sun. I thought this unit was unplayable for the longest time, but we finally had the stars aligned for this unit to be good. So what goes right? What do you need to have happen for Bog Deep Cocoon to be good? So there's a few pieces at work here. The most important thing, the hardest part about playing Bog Deep Cocoon is surviving Combat 2. This unit does not hatch Combat 2. It is not mathematically impossible, but it is so hard to hit a pace where this unit hatches in a time, like in time. You need to be playing 3 echoes per turn, which is not hard, but it is hard when you're playing with, because remember, the cards that you start with that are random are not infused, so your deck is 10 infused cards and like 14 uninfused cards, and that balance means that you are very unlikely to reach Shell 12 in time. Luckily for me, this run started with Soul Siphon. However, that did not help me get through Combat 2. The reason I lived Combat 2 is because I had the multi-strike plus 25, and I was able to play Echo Transfer on Bog Deep Cocoon. That just made him a 30 damage unit, which killed the boss. That was strong enough, but without that, this would have died in Combat 2 and would have been sad. So that's the most important thing about Bog Deep Cocoon. Once you get to the point where you get to start tailoring your run, it's okay. But if you really want to play this unit, you see it early, you probably have to throw like Steel Shop upgrades on a Train Steward or 2 to help you kill the boss. And just accept some damage, but he'll get you there. Once you get out of it, the cool thing we got to do on this run was Intrinsic Soul Siphon. You put down 4 echoes with this, and then Echo Right was Repeater 1, so I pulled Soul Siphon back, and that's 8 echoes of the 12 off of Shell right away. After that, you just have to play 4 more Echoes, which we can do pretty easily. A lot of the cards in this deck are infused, and then you're good to go. Once Bog Deep Cocoon was hatched, it was play as many consume spells as possible and throw some Echo Transfers in there as well. And there are a lot of consume spells here. Once I realized the plan, I picked as many consumes as I could, picked up Wormkin Etchings to throw more at it, and Bog Deep Cocoon was ending at like 400 times 2 trample with quick. Let's see. What was he ending at? Let's take a quick look. What did he end at in the Divinity? Around 203 times 2 on the Harvest Wave, pretty quick. Just a quick review. Yeah, 326 times 2. Did that Harvest Wave hit me? I think it did actually hit me. No, not quite. Pretty close though. Oh, because of the rail spikes? I think because of the rail spikes. Not quite because of the rail spikes, but something like that. Anyway, no, not this. No, don't need to be that in depth. But yeah, it's a cool combo. Repeater, Soul Siphon, good way to pump out enough echoes to play your units. And yeah, this run was fun. It was cool to find a winning line for Bog Deep Cocoon. The unit is weird because you have to balance an etch plan with also an infused plan. But at the end of the day, when you have it guaranteed as easily as we did with Soul Siphon, you can just click on every consume spell and etch a ton. This would have also been good with Marshward 3, of course, but I did not see Marshward after the initial take where I picked Shellsmith. And it's good. This run was good. It was very fun. Bog Deep Cocoon is a cool unit when he works. Awoken was also here. Alright, the final run in the streak. This is Hellhorn Melting, and it is Brawler 3 Prince again. Notice a bit of a theme with Prince. The front line for Prince is Wickless Baron, and that's basically it. Scale Prince through Fledgling Imp, with Welder Helper for survivability. The important thing to know about this run is this run was really, really close to being a loss. In the first ring, in the first combat, there was a unit draft. And the unit draft was 2 mediocre units. It was like Alpha Fiend, Demon Fiend probably. And then it was Wickless Baron. And I looked ahead and there was a Steel Shop banner next to the Steel Shop, or there was a Steel Shop with a banner, and the banner was Hellhorned. And I was really close to skipping Wickless Baron in hopes for the better unit, which would be Steelworker. Because Steelworker helps protect Prince. Prince is kind of scary. Sometimes he dies, it's frightening. And so I almost skipped the Wickless Baron to hold on and wait for something better. Because he's not great. He's a 2-space unit that has Harvest and he tanks pretty well. But he's not great, right? So I was hoping for something else. But I thought about it a little more. And I realized if I miss Steelworker and I pick Wickless Baron, I could be losing the run, basically. It is important to think about that. Like, it's 1 removal if I'm wrong. And if I'm right, it saves the run. And in this case, it saves the run. Wickless Baron was the best option. The banner had something worthless. I think it was like, I don't know what it was exactly, but I'm going to say it was Alpha Fiend Consumer of Crowns. It was something unplayable, where I would have been in a really bad position had I not picked Wickless Baron. And the Wickless Baron got to carry us through the early game as a frontliner for Prince. The survivability option for Prince ended up being Endless Fledgling Imp with a Welder Helper infuse, and the Welder Helper infuse ends up, because of how it works, where it gives armor 10 to the unit itself and then 10 to friendly units. This is 30 armor per round, and that 30 armor also gets applied to the Fledgling Imps, who get to chump all the damage for our boys. The run cuts it a little close because the rage scales a little slowly, just a little slowly, because it's only 5 instead of what you would want, which is 10. And there were no supplementary ritual battles, but it ends up getting there. The Fledgling Imps, once you get there in terms of rage, the Fledgling Imps just give armor and it's great. Without the armor, we would have, of course, died. However, in hindsight, it would have been kind of nice to try and do like 2 Fledgling Imps with Welder Helper, 1 Fledgling Imp with Fledgling Imp, but that didn't line up. I don't remember the run clearly enough to think about that right now, but that would have helped in hindsight. Even just thinking about this in hindsight, it's something I had not thought of until this moment comes to mind. The run also has Resonant Shard, Collection of Tales, which were pretty important in getting our rage number there. So worth mentioning those as well. A lot of times the fledgling imps got to hit, by the way, because of the amount of armor they were giving out. Because if you cascade it right, you get like 40 armor on the front unit, so a 46 health unit in front. A lot of waves don't kill that, so the fledgling imps get to just pump in a little extra damage too, which was nice to have. And yeah, that was the 15 runs in the streak. I will show you the 16th run because it would have been a win. I'll tell you why I lost it. It was a sad one. I felt real bad about it for a while, but I got over it. Let me just check and make sure I didn't want to say anything else here. Nah. The most important thing here is sometimes you need to settle. Pick Wickless. Sometimes, or a lot of times in Monster Train, it is better for you to pick something mediocre and commit to it than sit there and try to wait for the perfect line to show up. Because the perfect line, if you miss it, then you don't have the mediocre fallback, you lose the run. And that's what would have happened to me here if I didn't pick Wickless Baron. And that's important to note. And then the loser. This run made me real sad. I was mad at myself for this run. So you'll notice this run died at the Divinity. This run died at the Divinity because I abandoned the run. I had to reset to win this run. So this run plays Cultivate 3 Sentient, a Shattered Shell infused Kin Host Vessel, and that's the plan. It's multi plus 25 Shattered Shell on Kin Host Vessel, and it's a Cultivate Sentient. This run died on Combat 2 because I tried to save 2 HP. What happened was I miscounted my shell, basically. I did not hatch my Kin Host Vessel, and it did not have plus 25, it just had multi-strike, I believe. And the boss of Combat 2 was Sweep. So what happened was the boss walked up, I was 1 shell away from my Kin Host Vessel hatching, and he got swept and died, and then I lost the run. But I reset it because I wanted to see how the run would go. Kin Host Vessel as a unit, I'm still kind of on the fence about, but yeah. If I had the forethought to look at the run a little closer, I would have seen that I was 1 echo short. I miscounted because of playing a Bogfly, which I had to play the Bogfly to have enough damage to not die to the incant enemy, but in playing the Bogfly, I took an Ember Drain, and I was 1 short on the turn before the boss walked up to hatching my egg. And it was real sad. Upon replaying the combat, I took 2 extra damage and beat the boss handedly, and the rest of the run went on to be pretty free. The reason I played this run out, though, and the reason I'm talking about it is because I'm really on the fence about Kin Host Vessel as a unit, and I don't know what to do with him. I think you need to play multiple. I think you need to have 2 or 3 Kin Host Vessels. I think 1 on his own doesn't win it for you, but that's a big shell ask. So your deck needs to be very good at putting out echoes to hatch these quickly, which I think you can build. I think you can build your deck around hatching very quickly and just letting these guys pop off. This run here won because of an Umbrastone event. Putting Umbrastone on this 3 multi-strike Kin Host Vessel, he got to be pretty big. Let me pull it up, actually. I want to look at this run real quick and see what kind of damage output this Kin Host Vessel was doing. Yeah, 57 times 3. Oh, it has Root Split Mass too to give you an extra round to kill things, I see. Let me look at the Divinity. Wow, you got the 276 times 3. I guess we're taking a lot of damage, so it does make sense. Sentient's taking a lot of damage there. Oh, and there's an Echo Transfer, huh? Oh yeah, there's also a Holdover Echo Transfer helping scale. Okay, I missed that card the first time I was looking through this. Yeah, so generally, Kin Host Vessel, I'm kind of back and forth on. I think it is best to play 2 of them. I think you need to play multiples, and it's kind of weird. One other thing worth mentioning real quick, and then I'm going to wrap this video up. If you're playing Cultivating Sentient, you can't play Quick with it. This is something I've learned more recently than the streak, but Quick with Cultivating Sentient, you lose a bunch of cultivates because you're not taking damage because the Quick is killing enemies too quickly, and then you start to scale slower and it can bottleneck you. So that's something to look out for as well. Keep it in mind. And yeah, that's all 16 runs broken down. A little review of each run. It was a pretty good streak. Lots of Root Split Masks, lots of Shattered Shells, lots of good stuff, lots of Wormkin. I could have definitely won that run. The run after that was brutal. I dropped this run because I just miscounted on Sycophants of Seraph, and I was way too greedy, and I dropped this run with the Sirens. This run should have been free, but I wasn't myself on the run back after this Awoken Wormkin loss. I was pretty hard on myself. I'm better now, but when I drop a streaklet to something dumb like that, I just feel pretty bad. Anyway, let me bring it over here. My closing notes. I'll just read from this and paraphrase. It was a good streak though. It was really. It feels weird to talk out a scripted thing. I'm sorry. I don't usually script stuff, so I'm feeling a little awkward. But it was a good streak. It really was. It was nice to run and win 15 runs in a row. It felt good. There were a lot of highs, and I feel like it's easy to look at this and kind of take away from myself and go like, oh yeah, well I just got carried by some real banger runs, right? There were some high highs with the Transcendence and the Steel Singers and the Shattered Shells, but there were some close runs. The 2 Brawler Prince runs were really close. The Shattered Shell Primordium run was close. There were and like putting together that Bog Deep Cocoon run too. Those were runs that were like, it took me some brain power and some smarts to really put that together and not just settle for something worse, right? And that felt good. I think that I play like devil's advocate, worst possible message I'll see on a video in my own brain, and I shouldn't do that. Like this was good. Winning 15 runs was good. It was impressive. I should let myself have this, but it's easy to get swept up and get overconfident. Sorry, just reading right from it. It's easy to get swept up and get overconfident. Like I said with the Exile Umbra, Exile Awoken run, you got to really always be asking yourself, why am I going to lose this run? What will catch me? What can get me? What can surprise me? You really have to expect everything. And if you do that, you'll start to win a lot more. Just ask yourself, what will kill me? Also take less pack shards. I find myself really doing better taking lower pack shards in the early game. But it was fun. It was good to put up a 15 streak, and I hope to put up a bigger streak soon. I do hope that you enjoyed me talking about this. It's something different. This isn't going to replace anything. This is just some extra content. I've had a lot of stuff like this I want to do, and I'm finally trying to take action in honor of 3,000 subs and get stuff done. I hope you did find this video helpful. Hope it was interesting at the very least. See what happened on all those runs. Maybe you watched them all and this is worthless, but it's good to look back and do a little retrospective and talk it all out, you know? I think that if you really put in the time and you sit down and you learn how every unit works and what synergies work and what doesn't, you really can reach a 100% win rate in this game. I don't think there's an unlosable seed. I think there are going to be seeds where you have to play lines that don't make a lot of sense, but if you play for long enough, you'll realize those situations and play lines that don't make a lot of sense. So, you know, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun listening to me talk for an hour and 20 minutes. Usually when I do a video like this, I have Cranberry or Dusk with me. Don't tell them. I do very much enjoy talking with them and like doing the tier list and things, but I have also kind of wanted to do a video that's just me discussing with my own thoughts only for a long form video style like this, and it was nice to do one finally. I do hope you enjoyed this. No telling when something else like this will present itself the opportunity to be made, but if you did enjoy, don't forget to leave me a like. Subscribe if you would like to see more. Check out the other Monster Train series. I do a daily video if this is the first thing you've ever seen from me. I do daily Monster Train content and some other stuff as well. And yeah, have a good one. Goodbye.